Hi everyone, it's John from What Up, and welcome back to another video. This will be my breakdown of Episode 6 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show, The Flame of Valon. What I plan on doing is walking through the episode scene by scene, we'll explain some of the things that are going on, give it some more context in relation to the books, and talk about the differences. Now, if you're new to the channel and you don't know what I do here, I normally cover Wheel of Time show news, so that's anything and everything to do with the production. So if there's leaks, rumors, stills, castings, official news, as well as the odd exclusive as well, I put out a ton of Wheel of Time content, including a bunch of videos per episode of the show as they drop. So if you like Wheel of Time stuff, I'm doing at least one video per day. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell so you don't miss anything at all. Now, before we actually get into the video, spoiler warning, this video is going to talk about Episode 6 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show. So if you haven't seen the first 6 episodes, you've been warned. I'm going to ruin elements from all 6 of them, as well as the first 3 books in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. That's The Eye of the World, The Great Hunt, and The Dragon Reborn. We have to talk about elements of all 3 of those books to talk about this episode in context. So, if you don't want any of that ruined, this probably isn't the video for you. Otherwise, let's get on to the video. The cold open of the show starts with a young swan in a fishing boat with her father. Now, he's having some difficulty untying knots and doing his job because he only has one hand, and that would be incredibly difficult for a fisherman. Now, as she uses the one power to untie these knots, you see this, dogs barking in the distance, and that's going to be important in just a minute. The rest of the scene unfolds where they go back into town towards their hut, and they find it's been burnt down and the dragon's fang is scrawled on a piece of wood out front, and then her father basically sends her off to the tower by herself in a fishing boat full of supplies, which is an incredibly long journey. He definitely won't win Father of the Year award, at least in my mind anyway. So let's try to explain the scene a little bit. Does it happen in the books? No. Not at all. This is something completely new. We don't see it in the books at all, although Swan's childhood is mentioned a couple of times here and there. It is never actively shown like this. We do know that she's a wilder, so she'll learn to use the one power on her own, and generally wilders, when they use the one power, they do things that benefits them. Sometimes it's to get things they like, to save themselves from a situation, heal someone they love, and in this case, she's helping her father do his work because she truly loves him. And then that's where this comes in. The dogs barking in distance is pretty important for a couple of different reasons. First one being is that in the book series, dogs do not like women who can channel. They generally don't get along with them. They don't like them. They snarl, they snap, they bite. They don't want to be near them. But cats are very affectionate to women channelers. And the opposite is true for men channelers. So dogs really like men who can channel, but cats don't like them. It's kind of just a funny little tidbit that Robert Jordan put in there. But because this is happening in Tyr is a country that basically does not like anything to do with one power whatsoever, and the people in Tyr are very scared of women who can channel. So essentially, once a young girl is found out that she can channel, she's packed off to the White Tower immediately because they want nothing to do with the one power. So you hear the dogs barking in the distance. It may be a stretch, but in my mind, as soon as I saw this, I kind of put 2 and 2 together, and I thought, well, maybe, just maybe, in the show, what they're doing is they're using dogs to find women who can channel, especially young girls who can channel, and kind of get rid of them, especially in Tyr. Because when they go back to their hut, it's burnt down. How would they know that she can channel unless they've seen it before, which I guess is entirely possible. And they scrawl the dragon's fang, which essentially is a sign of evil, or they don't like this person. That's what it is. It's not really described in the show at all. However, that's what it is. So if you see the dragon's fang inscribed on your door, it means someone is basically calling you a dark friend, or they don't like you and they think you're evil. So that's what they're doing here. So it's not a huge stretch to think they're using the dogs to find women who could channel, and then doing this to them to kind of get them out of the country. Now, last thing I want to mention is the end of the scene is her father packing her off in a boat to the White Tower, which is an incredibly long journey from Tyr, by herself. So he definitely will not win Father of the Year award, in my opinion. But in his mind, I guess maybe he was giving her the best chance to get there. I have no idea why they showcased her leaving alone and not with her father. But I want to hear your thoughts on that down below in the comments. I'm a parent myself, and this isn't something I would do, so I thought it was weird, kind of a strange choice. All right, so the next scene we have is this. Logain's being brought before the Amyrlin seat in the hall of the tower, and there's a lot of talk back and forth between the Aes Sedai, the Sitters, the Amyrlin seat, and what they're going to do with Logain and what happened in the outside world with Moiraine. So the first thing I want to mention is there's a couple of really important things in this scene, but none of this happens in the books. In fact, what happens in the books is Logain is paraded through Caemlyn, not Valon, and then he is brought to Valon for trial. He stands trial, which happens off page. We don't actually get to see it. And then he's found guilty of being a false dragon and a man who can channel, and then he's gentled according to Tower laws. So the fact that he was gentled in the field and then brought there a broken man never really happened. And these scenes where he is in front of the Amyrlin seat with Moiraine, Leandra, and Alanna also did not happen whatsoever, all completely made up for the show and completely different than what we would see in the book series. So I'm going to highlight a couple of things in here that I really liked, and some major differences in the attitudes, the traditions, and the way things work in the show versus the book series. So the first couple things I liked is Logain comes in chains, and the Amyrlin seat basically says he's of no threat to anybody, which 100% accurate. He's a gentle man, broken, no will to live, in an entire room full of women channelers, some of the most powerful in the world, because they are sitters in the hall, and the Amyrlin seat herself. He's no threat. So that's showing that he's completely powerless. The second thing I want to talk about is the fact that Logain basically tries to goad the Amyrlin seat into killing him. He's given up the will to live, so he's trying to rile her up so she would do something rash and take his life because he doesn't want to live anymore. She sees right through him, which the Amyrlin seat 100% absolutely should, because she's the most political ruler they have within the Westlands, at least in the book series anyway. And she says he's going to spend the rest of his days roaming the tower halls, being studied, never being free. Very brutal, but very wicked scene. I really enjoyed it. Hard to see Logain like that, but Alvaro Morte's a brilliant actor and he pulled it off really well. Now we're going to talk about some major changes in tradition in these scenes. So there's a couple of different things. The first thing is what happens. So after Logain is left, Leandrin basically calls out Moiraine in front of the entire hall and the Amyrlin seat, and she's not dressed down for it at all, which is really, really weird. In the book series, that wouldn't happen. I mean, it does sort of happen later on, much later on, but there are a lot of extenuating circumstances around that, a lot of stress and pressure. In this, Leandrin basically has no Aes Sedai cool whatsoever. She loses her temper, and she comes at Moiraine in front of a bunch of other people. That wouldn't happen in the books. She's also not taken to task for it. And in fact, Moiraine is taken to task for the fact that she has been outside of the tower, essentially doing whatever she wants, and she will not tell the Amyrlin what's going on. So, again, these are things that probably would not have happened whatsoever in the books, and it shifts some major attitudes, some major traditions, and the major way things are happening in the show versus the books. I'm going to give my thoughts on why I think this is happening. So the first reason why I think they may have done this instead of all of the cool, calm Aes Sedai traditions, things like that, is that probably wouldn't play as well on the screen. I think it would have been cool personally, but maybe not to everybody. Something a little more volatile, a little more emotional, something a little more charged on the screen might have played a bit better. Maybe that's why they wrote it and performed it this way. It's possible. But it is a major change from the books. Alright, so the next scene we're going to talk about here is the healing of Mat. So essentially, Mat is tainted from the dagger from Shadar Logoth, and its infection or its darkness has poisoned his mind, poisoned him, and Moiraine heals him in this scene. This happens in the books, sort of, kind of, but not really the same way. So we're going to talk just a bit about that and what I think is going on here. So, does this scene happen in the books? Kind of. It's very different. So what we're seeing here, I think, is what Moiraine did in Caemlyn in the Queen's Blessing. So there's an inn in Caemlyn. Basically, everyone met there before traveling to Fal Dara. They never went to Tar Valon whatsoever. And she did heal Mat a little bit. So she healed him of the corruption of the dagger just a bit. But he kept the dagger with him, and she couldn't completely break the link between Mat and the dagger whatsoever. She was not strong enough on her own to do it, and she said he would have to go to Tar Valon. And basically, when they did that, it happened during the Great Hunt, and it took a full circle. So 13 sisters with an object of power that amplifies their ability to use the one power. So they used a literal buttload of one power to break the link between Mat and the dagger, and during that it caused a lot of problems for him. He became very sickly afterwards, holes in his memory, all kinds of different stuff happened. So do I think that this scene is completely replacing that scene? No, I don't think so, not at all. I think this probably replaced the scene in The Eye of the World in Caemlyn, where she healed a little bit of it from him, helped protect him from it, and let him keep the dagger afterwards because taking it from him might make him sick. Why the change? Well, I think this is visually impressive, the way she heals him. I think it looks really, really nice on the screen, the way she pulls the blackness out of him, puts it back into the dagger, and they kind of hide the dagger from him. But I think we're not seeing the full story here. So I think what we're going to probably see later on is we're going to see him go back and take the dagger, because there's a lot of talk about arrogance here. So there's a lot of talk about the men's arrogance against the Dark One. There's a lot of talk about different things like that. I think this is Moiraine being arrogant of her abilities. I think that she thinks she healed Mat from the dagger, that she broke the connection, and everything is absolutely peachy keen, just fine, because she then, near the end of the episode, takes him with everyone else to go to the Waygate. But I think in reality, she didn't. I don't think connection was broken. I don't think he was fully healed whatsoever. I think the dagger's still calling to him. So we're going to talk about that just a bit near the end of the episode when we get to talking about the scenes with Mat at the very, very end. But I think that's what's happening here. So I don't believe this is the full healing of Mat whatsoever. I don't think there's been a lot of talk online and Reddit and on Twitter and stuff like that, the showrunner and the writers basically took Moiraine, leveled her up to the point where she's more powerful than a full circle with the Ter'angreal. That's not the case. I think this is a substitute for the scene that we seen in Camelin, where she healed him just a little bit but never broke the connection, but she doesn't seem to realize that she hasn't broke the connection. That's my 2 cents on it anyway. Let me know what you folks think down below in the comments. Am I kind of right there maybe? Am I a little off base? I want to hear your thoughts on this. All right, so now we have a couple of different scenes I want to talk about here. The first one is Moiraine and Magdan in the baths. A few things happen here, and they set up things that are going to happen later on in the season, and I believe in season 2, but they didn't happen in the books. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is the fact that Moiraine and Magdan are talking in the baths, and she says that she may have to stay in the tower permanently. This sets up a couple things later on in the episode. Basically, she tells Siuan that she has to be exiled as part of her punishment because the leader of the Blue Ajah is essentially ordering her to stay in the tower, which she kind of has to follow the orders. And that gets around that. So I think that's why they put that in there, so she could leave rather than being ordered to stay there. The second thing is that Magdan is saying that she may have to go out west to investigate the disappearance of certain ships. That is setting up the Shan-Chan, for sure, 100%. It's referenced a couple times in this episode, and we know that they've cast people to be people on the west coast watching ships coming in for the 8th episode. So I'm almost positive that we're going to see a fleet of Shan-Chan ships near the end of the first season, maybe even as the final scenes of the first season, to set up the big hook and the big cliffhanger for season 2. So that's why this is referenced here. The next thing we see a little bit of yellow flowers and maybe either some green ribbon or green leaves fall out of Moiraine's clothes when she reached down for a towel. And what that is a message from the Yellow Sisters, because the very next scene that they shift to is her going to the Yellow Quarters and talking to a Yellow Sister played by Evelyn Mock, who then leads her to Perrin and Egwene, and they have a little conversation there. Now, again, none of these scenes happen in the books whatsoever. This is all brand new, and this is all set up for what's happening later on in the first season and the second season. There's talk of Perrin's yellow and golden eyes from Egwene. She asks Moiraine straight out if he's the dragon. Moiraine really doesn't give her a definite answer, saying he's not. And that is part of the whole reason we're seeing this, is because they have basically told the audience the dragon could be anybody. Could be any of the Emonsfielders, including Nynaeve, who is completely the wrong age. And they're kind of keeping up that ruse, and I think they're going to keep that up right till episode 7, when we're going to be told who the actual dragon is, which is Rand. I mean, we knew in the books very, very early on that it was him. Everyone guessed it was because we're seeing it from those characters' point of views. But here we're seeing it from Moiraine's point of view. Here we're seeing it from other people's points of view, not the Emonsfielders. So I'm guessing that the hook is going to keep until episode 7. That's my guess anyway. Let me know your thoughts down below. I want to hear what you folks think of this whole business, that the dragon could be any one of them, and how insanely hard they're trying to showcase that it could be Mat, it could be Perrin, Egwene, even Nynaeve, and they're really not talking about Rand very much at all. The only instance that we've had where Rand has stood out was when Loial basically called him an Aielman, and that was one small instance in all of the episodes. I want to hear your thoughts on what they're doing here. Is it working? A lot of my non-book reader friends have not guessed that Rand is the dragon. A few of them who watched the show a couple of times are saying that he's definitely the dragon because they're not spending enough time on him. But I want to hear your thoughts down below. All right, so now we have this scene here. This is one I'm pretty excited to talk about because it is some major changes from the books. None of this happens in the books, again, and nor does it have any really resemblance or bearing to what happens in the books whatsoever, except in some small ways here and there. So we're going to talk about this scene here in particular, where Moiraine uses this object of power, we believe, in her room to travel here. And I specifically use the word travel. And she travels to see Siuan. So, we're going to talk first about that object of power in the room. So in the show, it's not mentioned what it is at all. There's literally not much talked about it at all. So it is a big mystery in the show. If you look at the bonus materials, it calls it a Ter'angreal, so we know it's a Ter'angreal. The bonus materials also say it's a gateway to the Fingers of the Dragon, to a fishing hut in the Fingers of the Dragon. Those are very specific terms to people who have read the books before. For those of you who haven't read the books, a gateway is a way of using the one power to travel from one place to another place. It's been lost to the sands of time. Aes Sedai of the current age don't know it until it's discovered much later on in the book series. Introducing it this early creates some problems. So using that term, it's a bit different. So there's a lot of debate and controversy about this particular object of power and what it does. Now, Siuan does have a matching one in her room. We'll see that in one of the next scenes. So the general consensus is people believe one of two things. Either they're weaving an actual gateway to this one location, which is kind of weird. It doesn't really make much sense in the context of the books, but in a show, just as an object of power, it magics it up, and they get to magically go there. Okay. The second thing is, this could be a dream shard, a part of Taran-angreal, and if you don't know what that is, basically it's a world of dreams. So it's a world that mirrors our own, but you can only access it while sleeping or stepping physically into it. And that's the other theory. Now, Moiraine just gave an interview today, actually. Rosamund Pike gave an interview, rather, not Moiraine. But she talked about her character, about the scene in particular, and this Ter'angreal. And she mentioned that it's a real place, but not really a world, but a mirror world, but not really the same, but kind of dreaming. Her words and the way she used and talked about it, it seemed like she kind of knew what she was trying to say when she gave the interview, but a little bit it was contradictory. What I get out of the interview when I read it was the fact that this is most likely Taran-angreal or a dream shard. It's not really the real world. Now, if you take a look around at the hut in the background, it mirrors the hut that Siuan grew up in. So either she's rebuilt it and made it kind of the same, or this is Taran-angreal and they're using it kind of as a plot device where they can go somewhere just to talk. Now, after this, we see a scene where you realize that Siuan and Moiraine are lovers, which 100% book accurate. A lot of people out there are saying this never happened in the books. Yes, it did. It 100% did. They were pillow friends, which meant that they were lovers when they were accepted, when they were novices, and when they were young sisters when they were first raised to the shawl. And the only reason they never pursued the relationship after that is because Moiraine was basically out of the tower for like 20 years. She was just gone. They were never together after that, although they remained very, very close. So there are some people suggesting that this didn't happen in the books. It 100% did. They had a relationship. They were lovers. In the show, however, they're still lovers in the present day. So that's not a huge change to me. It's just the way it is. But what I find more important about this is one of two things happens here. Siuan mentions her dreams, and that she sees the Dark One at the Eye of the World, and he's weak in her dreams. This implies to me that she's a dreamer. Now, in the book series, a dreamer who's someone who can foretell the future through dreams and can enter the dream world. So Siuan was not a dreamer in the books. In fact, she was pretty terrible at it. So this is a huge change. However, my thoughts on this is I don't think she's a dreamer. I don't believe she is. I think that Shamael, the Dark One, or Shamael masquerading as the Dark One, is invading her dreams because he's a dreamer, and he's a quite powerful one at that, and trying to make her, and implanting these ideas in her head, to have everyone go to the Eye of the World. Because I believe what's going to happen in episodes 7 and 8 is they're going to go to the Eye of the World, and they're essentially going to release him, and maybe some of the other Forsaken as well, by accident, by using the Eye. That's my guess anyway, so I don't think she's a dreamer. I think these dreams were implanted in her head by Shamael, I believe anyway. So, let me know what you folks think of these scenes down below. I want to know what you folks think of the Ter'angreal. Is it actually weaving a gateway and going to the Fingers of the Dragon like the bonus material says? Because it's very plain writing that that's what it is. Or is it more along the lines of what Moiraine said, where this is a world of dreams, it's real, but it's a dream? Very confusing language, but basically she implied that this was the world of dreams or a dream shard. Do you think it's that? Or do you think it's something completely different that hasn't been explained yet in the show? Now, my thoughts are I think it's a dream shard of the world of dreams, and I really super hope they explain this later on and don't leave it a mystery, because it's one of those things that's bugging me as a book reader, because I really want to know, because I like things being explained to me, and I like knowing what's going on, and not trying to figure them out, maybe 2 or 3 seasons down the road. This is something I think that non-book readers would really kind of want to know. Anyway, that's my 2 cents anyway. Let me know what you think down below. All right, next we have a scene where Moiraine and Lan are walking in the hallway, and they're essentially talking a little bit about Rand, a little bit about Mat, if Mat's recovered, and they're talking, kind of alluding to their journey and what they're going to do. And then they meet Leandrin, and Leandrin kind of butts in, and she knows a little too much for Moraine's taste, and you can tell there's a lot of tension. Is the best way to say, between the two of them, and it's pretty obvious that they don't like each other. One of the cool things about this, like these scenes here, again, did not happen in the book series whatsoever. Not even remotely. We're basically almost everything that happens from the rest of the show, of this episode, doesn't happen in the book series, but it has small little tidbits that kind of tie into the books. So these scenes, again, are brand new. We're seeing the difference between the red and the blue Ajas. We're seeing the hate that Leandrin and Moiraine have for each other and the disdain. But we're seeing something else here. We're seeing Moiraine deftly maneuver around Leandrin. So Leandrin's basically threatening to tattle on her to the Amyrlin about the fact that she's trying to leave, she's getting ready to go, that she has all these people with her, that she's doing something and she's being secretive, which is part of the reason why Moraine's getting a punishment in the first place. And then Moiraine says, well, I'm sure that your Red Sisters would like to know about the man that you're meeting in North Harbor. And the look on her face, Leandrin's face when this happens, is priceless. I love it. My thoughts on that are, most likely she's not meeting a man to meet a man. She's probably meeting a man who is a dark friend. It could be one of the Forsaken, could be just a regular dark friend. Either way, I believe she's getting orders, because we do know that she is not exactly a good person, and she's Black Aja. We figured that out, I think, by partway through book 2, when you find out that she lies and she does a few other different things to progress the plot, I guess is the best way, near the end of book 2. I don't want to spoil too much there. I'm trying to avoid talking about that part of the book. So I think that's what that's hinting at. And then some viewers have picked up on that and say, well, she's meeting a man, but she doesn't like men. What's going on here? It's because she's a dark friend. She's getting orders. That's my guess anyway. Now, the next part of the scene is Moiraine and Lan meeting Loial. Now, they meet Loial, and they say they need his help, but they don't say how or why or what they need his help with. The scene was abruptly cut off, in my opinion anyway, and then transitions to the next scene. So before we go to the next scene, I want to talk about that just a bit. They did release deleted material. So there's a couple screenshots out there of a deleted scene where Loial and Moiraine have a big map out. They're going over what's going on. And I think honestly, like a lot of other things, this episode feels a little clunky in the fact that it was edited just terribly. And they're missing a lot of things that would explain things to the readers and progress the plot properly, progress characters properly. It just kind of seems a little thrown together to me. I think if they have left that scene in, you'd understand more why Loial's going with them. Now, don't get me wrong. We haven't seen episodes 7 and 8 yet. And I'm thinking that maybe, perhaps just maybe, they're going to explain why Loial goes with them in episode 7. I would hope anyway, because he's supposed to read the guideposts. And that a lot of these things that we have questions on will be wrapped up neatly before the end of the first season. I hope anyway. That's the hope. So I want to know what you folks think down below. Let me know in the comments down below. Did you find it a little clunky? The fact that it got cut off really quickly? Have you seen that deleted photo, the deleted scene with the still screenshots from it that are out there with Loial holding a map that would have been absolutely amazing to keep in the show? It would have explained this so much better. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that. All right, so this next scene, we have Egwene and Nynaeve meeting the Amyrlin Seat for the first time. And we get this little tidbit here, which I really loved, and I'm going to stop it right here, because then when she says Nynaeve's name, you see Egwene's face fall. I love that. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing them meet the Amyrlin Seat for the first time, which happens a bunch of times in the books. This particular scene doesn't happen in the book series. However, it's kind of a callback and a little bit of a nod to the times that it does happen when Egwene and Nynaeve meet the Amyrlin Seat, and then she gives them small tasks. I was kind of hoping the scene would go a little bit differently and near one of the later scenes in the books, a little bit closer, but it didn't. Either way, it was still a pretty good scene. In the background behind Siuan, you see the twin to Moraine's Ter'angreal, so another picture frame that she uses to travel, so that's there, so that's a nice bit of continuity. And then you have the Amyrlin Seat basically saying that the most powerful channeler they've seen in years, Nynaeve Almira. Now, when they did that, when she's talking about this, Egwene is kind of smirking and grinning and happy because she thinks it's her, and as soon as she sees it's Nynaeve, she's shocked. Her face falls a little bit. Oh, it's not her. It's Nynaeve instead. After this, you have the Amyrlin explain to them why they need to go to the Eye, what's going on, that the dragon has to be there. They don't know what's going to really happen to everyone else that goes, but they all have to go with Moiraine. So basically what she's doing is she's selling it to Nynaeve, especially, because I think Egwene just would have went on her own either way, that they need to go with Moiraine to the Eye, and that's the point of this whole scene. Now, one of the things that I got out of the scene was, and from earlier in the show, I think it was the episode where Nynaeve went Super Saiyan, I think it was episode 4, where she healed everyone. Essentially, Moiraine never showcased any thought out loud that Nynaeve could channel. Now, in the book series, that I said I can sense other women who could channel when they're close enough to them, as long as they've already channeled and they have the spark. That didn't happen. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen ever, or it doesn't mean it's part of the lore. It just means it didn't happen in the show, and they didn't make a big deal out of it. So there's been a lot of talk online. Can women sense other women who could channel if they have the spark, unless they're holding the power and stuff like that? It hasn't explicitly been said in the show or not whether they can. It just hasn't been showcased. So it's possible we'll see that. Let me know your thoughts on that down below too, because that is another possible small change from the book series. Now we're getting into a very big, very powerful scene that has very, very huge, far-reaching implications for the changes from the books to the show. Alright, so the next scene we have is this. This is where Moiraine faces judgment in the hall in front of all the sitters in the Amyrlin seat, and they do it in a very different fashion than I truly expected, most book readers expected. So this does not happen in the books. Again, this is completely different from the book series, completely different scene, and it's used to showcase how the Oath Rod works. And that I believe that's the entire point of this scene, is just to show how the Oath Rod works. In the book series, what would normally happen if a sister is given a penance, so exile to a farm, to do hard labor, or birching, or any number of other things that either they impose upon themselves, a sitter would impose on them, or the Amyrlin herself would impose on them, all that is needed is they say they would do it. Because they've already sworn in the Oath Rod, I don't know word that is not true, and they say they're going to do something to the best of their ability, they will do that. They have to. It's just the way the three oaths work. They'll be held to that. Now in the show, they didn't do that. What they're doing instead is they're having Moiraine come in and they're having her swear in the Oath Rod that she will abide by the wishes of the Amyrlin. She will go into exile and she will not come back until the Amyrlin calls her home. Which is... We'll talk about that first. So swearing a fourth oath is kind of world-breaking. A little bit, unless they change some things later on, which I believe they're probably going to change. Let's face it, they're going in this direction now. They're probably going to change a couple other things to make this more normal later on. But in the book series, this would be considered absolute... It just wouldn't happen. I mean, there's precedent for it in later books. It does, and I'm not going to get into it because I didn't give spoilers for it. However, it is not a normal thing. The sitters in the hall are all sitting around, the Amyrlin's sitting around, the keepers there, they're all acting like it's completely normal. So this is a major change from the books to the show. Completely different. The other thing is when she swears this oath, she's not swearing exactly the same way that Siuan says it, which I think is important. Because Siuan does say the Amyrlin, and when Moiraine repeats the oath, she uses the words Siuan, so she uses Siuan's name. Now something else I thought was a little strange. I mean, I know why it was done. It was done for dramatic effect to showcase Moiraine and Siuan's relationship and how close they are and how emotional the moment is and stuff. But it's, at least for the books to the show, a big break in their characters. It's when Moiraine swears the oath, she adds a bunch of extra stuff to showcase how much she loves Siuan. She basically says all the same words that Siuan's father said to her when they were young. So it shows their relationship, shows how close they are. There's tears in both their eyes. They're both very upset. And she says it in a low voice so it doesn't carry to everyone else in the hall. However, essentially, what she's doing is she's completely jeopardizing the fact that they're working together or they have a close relationship, because it's not supposed to be known, by saying these things in front of everyone. Even though she's saying it quietly, that doesn't mean somebody may overhear. Big break in their characters from the books. And it was done to showcase emotion in the moment, showcase the relationship. I know why it was done. But a little weird for me as a book reader. I thought it was a little strange. That... almost as much as the using the Oath Rod to swear a fourth oath was what I found weird about this scene. Now, she used Siuan's name. So when she used Siuan's name, it means that she's going to abide by this oath for Siuan. So if the Amyrlin ever happens to change in any way, shape, or form, she doesn't have to listen to the new Amyrlin. She has to only listen to Siuan. And I believe that's going to be a very important plot point later on, maybe in season 2 or 3, if something like that were to happen in the show. All right, so I want to hear your thoughts down below about the scene. Did I like the scene? Absolutely. I thought it was emotional. I thought it was powerful. I thought it was very cool. Do I understand it? No. Not in the least bit. I know why it was done, I guess, intellectually, but emotionally I didn't really understand it. So intellectually, it's to showcase their relationship together, how close they are, make it really nice TV, like what's going on there, showcases how the Oath Rod works, so it shows the audience all of that. But as far as the plot goes and the story goes, I didn't truly understand it. So I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Explain to me why you think Moiraine would say that to Siuan in front of the entire hall, even if she's whispering it, which her voice doesn't seem really that low. Why she would threaten their entire mission and their secret relationship by talking about that in front of everyone else. And why do you think they're using the Oath Rod in this way rather than showcasing how it works in a different way? I want to hear your thoughts on both those things down below in the comments. All right, so now we're going to get into the final scenes of this episode, which we have some things to talk about there too. All right, so now we have the final scenes of episode 6. This is where they're at the Waygate. Everyone shows up. Again, completely different than the book series in a bunch of different ways, and we'll highlight those just a bit. So what happens in the books is essentially they find Loial in the Queen's Blessing in Caemlyn. They know that he knows the ways, he can read the guideposts and the ways, and it's a way to get them quickly to Faldera, to the Eye of the World. That's the whole reason they're going there, because they're going to ask the Green Men for a favor, and Moiraine needs to bring everyone there. In the show, the Waygate is not in Caemlyn, it's in Valon, outside the city, so not near Nogear Grove, not near anything else, it's outside the city itself, so a little bit different. And there's a lot of different thoughts on why they did certain things they're doing in the scene. Moiraine seems a little surprised as people are riding up, hoping that everyone will show up. Again, a huge departure from the book, because she would have just grabbed them all and made them go in the books. Here, she's kind of hoping they're going to come and trusting in the pattern to make them come, which, I mean, dramatic effect, absolutely. It looks really good to have them all ride up, and she's like, oh, everybody's here, that's great. Again, at this point, we still really don't know why Loial's here. It hasn't really been explained. I'm kind of hoping it is explained in episodes 7 and 8, why he's there. He's going to read the guideposts and whatnot in the ways. But Moiraine does something else, which is a little bit different than she does in the books. She explains everything to them. She keeps everything very close to the vest during the Eye of the World, and she does give them tidbits here and there and explain what's going on. However, here she just lays it all out for them completely, which I think is a good thing. It's an exposition dump. It explains to the viewers what's going on, why they're going to the Eye, what's going to happen there, and I think that's a great thing. Even though it's a big change from the books and how she would maybe act in this situation at this point, I think it's good for the viewers. Now, another thing they do is they take the horses and they kind of make them go away. It's dangerous for the horses to go in the ways. The horses went through the ways with them in the books, and they did need them to go into the Blight and stuff later on. But they did that for a couple of different reasons. One, the ways set was very small. I've seen pictures of it. It's about the size of a football field. It's inside in a studio. They couldn't have horses there. It wouldn't have worked out really well. So having the horses in the ways and filming it probably was cost prohibitive and dangerous. So they just get rid of them before they enter the ways. They don't have many supplies with them, so I don't think the journey through the ways is going to take them very long. I think it'll be quite quick before they get to Faldera, and it'll probably be much closer to Faldera than they got in the books, because they don't have anything with them. They're going to be walking on foot. The other thing is, here that was changed, is that in the book series, every Waygate has a trefoil leaf, and that trefoil leaf is moved to a certain position, and it opens the Waygate. Now, only a person who knows what the leaf looks like, where it's at, and where to move it to can open the ways. But anyone can. So let's say someone found a book in a library, looked it up, they go to the Waygate and they can open it up and they can do that. In the show, it seems as if they've changed that completely to be power only. So it looks like Moiraine used the one power to open the Waygate, although you did see the trefoil leaf, which was a nice nod to the book readers in the background of her power, kind of formed that leaf. But she used the one power to open the Waygate. There's some thoughts on that. So in the book series, the ways were a gift from male Aes Sedai during the breaking to the Ogier. So essentially, a lot of male Aes Sedai went to the setting, and it stayed off madness because they couldn't use the one power. One by one, they all left because they couldn't resist the urge to use the one power. But while they were there, as a thank you, they gave them something called the ways. So these ways are places are like doorways into sort of like an alternate dimension where time and space is a little bit different. So you could go through the ways and travel for half a day and do 6 days travel somewhere else. And they are all connected to all the Ogier groves. They gave them a talisman of growing to grow these Waygates outside their groves and their steadings, so they could basically be connected. All the Ogier in the world could be connected. None of that's really explained in the show yet. I think it will be at some point. I hope it will be. But this Waygate seems to be a little bit far removed. Doesn't have a doorway on it, so I think maybe what the ways are going to be slightly different in the books. Interior, how they look on the inside, I think probably going to be different as well, because in the book series it's completely dark, not really good looking on screen. I wouldn't imagine if it was just a bunch of darkness, so I think they're probably going to change that. But I think they're changing fundamentally how the ways work. I'm not opposed to it. It's a change that could work for the show, or they could not be changing it at all. Could be this one particular Waygate had its door destroyed a long time ago and you need the 1 power to open it, and then other Waygates you can use a trefoil leaf to open them, or maybe the trefoil leaf will be like an object of power they bring to the Waygate to open it up, rather than using the 1 power. I have no idea. Again, this is the first time we've seen the Waygate used. There could be multiple ways of using it, and there's not really much literature from the show or explanation on how they work or what's going on here, so we don't know exactly how it works. The other part of the scene that I want to talk about is the very end. The very, very end of the episode is everyone going into the ways except for Mat. Mat kind of hangs out at the end, and he's just kind of looking around, and then the 1 power kind of closes the door, and Mat's left outside. So, a little bit clunky, doesn't really work that well, can be explained in any number of ways whatsoever, absolutely, but we know that Barney Harris exited the show, and he's the one who plays Mat. We know he's not going to come back for season 2, and we're pretty sure he's not in episode 7 or 8, at least not in a major way. So my guess is that this was their way of writing him out, and perhaps it's the only way forward they had to have him not go with them to Faldar in the Eye of the World, or I could be completely wrong there, and maybe this was planned all along. That is also a small possibility, and this is how they meant it to happen, but it does seem like the ending was something they had to do, and we've seen a number of other shows do it where they had to write a character out for any number of different reasons. It's usually a little forced, usually doesn't flow real well. You can tell when you watch it that it's not how it was supposed to happen, and they did their best to edit it together that way. So I think that's what happened here. So that's why the ending of this one, where Mat was left outside and everyone's standing inside yelling, is a little different. And I think they're probably going to introduce some mechanic in episode 7 where Moiraine either cannot or will not open that doorway back up. I don't know how that's going to work, because if she's holding it up with the 1 power, she could hold open for Mat, walk back out, had 90 grab him by the ear and haul him in. So I think they're probably going to have to explain that away some way, shape, or form at the beginning of episode 7. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this episode. By and large, I gave it a review. I think I gave it a 7 out of 10 in my review video. I liked most elements of it. Again, the editing, pacing, and stuff like that, those are the only things that I had problems with. So I want to hear your thoughts down below. What do you think of this episode? Again, differed completely from the books. None of this stuff happened in the books. Had an exposition dump here or there, explained how the 3 oaths worked, explained how the oath rod worked, explained a lot about tower politics, a little bit about different things, but left explanations out for the ways, the Ter'angreal, and different things like that. I want to hear your thoughts on what you thought of the episode down below. Let me know if you liked it, if you loved it, if you didn't like it, if you hated it. Lay it all out in the comments down below, because I want to hear everyone's thoughts on this one. All right. Thank you so very much for sticking with me here to the very end. Here's to many more.